Welcome to Soundtrack Your Life, a podcast about soundtracks, music, and movies. Each episode features a guest and focuses on a specific soundtrack and the personal stories connected to it. Now here's your host, Ryan Pack.
Welcome to Soundtrack Your Life. I'm Ryan Pack. Brandice Wilson and Nicole Barlow are back on the podcast, but instead of continuing our series of dissecting Ewan McGregor's attractiveness in music-heavy films, we decided to instead discuss the 2017 David Leitch film Atomic Blonde, which famously does not star Ewan McGregor. Brandice, why are we talking about Atomic Blonde?
Wait, I'm really confused. I thought this was the Ewan McGregor podcast. That's why I'm here.
That's why I'm here too.
I thought we were here to roast Nicole. Wait, you're telling me we're talking about a movie that doesn't have Ewan McGregor?
You're the one that picked it.
All I could think throughout the movie was, how much better would this be if the James McAvoy character was just Ewan McGregor? They're completely, you can just switch that up. 20 years ago would have been Ewan McGregor with the same buzz cut.
I was just thinking, wait, hold on. Who are we going to compare, weight to with, Ewan McGregor? I'm so lost. Who's Nicole going to pull for? I don't know who she's, attracted to in this movie. Also, I planned, a whole intro to your podcast. It's, a new one, the Nicole and Ewan McGregor show, but apparently it's totally irrelevant now.
I thought Nicole was going to hope that Ewan McGregor replaced the French spy in the film.
I'm just going to talk about Gorbachev and the wall, and it's going to be real sexy.
I guess I should possibly warn of spoilers. I don't know what's going to happen in this episode, but there might be spoilers.
They're probably going to be spoilers.
Spoiler, the Berlin Wall comes down.
Oh my God. I didn't know that. Shit.
Spoilers. Charlize Theron is the Atomic Blonde.
It's just a little historical fact for everyone. Charlize Theron actually took down the Berlin Wall herself with a red stiletto. First chip at the wall.
Yep, that happens in the first 10 minutes though, so it's not really a spoiler.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could start by discussing that this movie takes place in pre-wall coming down East-West Berlin in the 80s, 89.
Hardcore 80s vibes with the soundtrack and with the fashion, and absolutely 100% here for it.
And this has nothing to do with music, but aesthetically, this movie looks so good. It's both literally and figuratively cool. It's just a cool looking film. And it's the best anyone has ever looked in the 80s. Usually you think of 80s movies real or set in the present and made to look like the 80s. And everybody's got some really horrifying perm and some shoulder pads that are up to the ceiling. And it's just gross. Charlize Theron looks so fucking good. It's not fair.
I don't think there were any mullets in this film, actually.
No, everybody just looks so good. The costuming is probably not as 80s or as 89 as it should be. Everyone looks suspiciously great.
Well, maybe because it's Europe. Maybe in U.S., we were the ones with the problems with the bad part of the 80s, and the Europe just had the good part of the 80s. I don't know that. It's a theory.
No, I had that same thought. I was was it just really cool in Europe at the time? We were the ones fucking it up.
No, everything about this film was amazing. Obviously, the acting, the soundtrack was on point. The fashion was killer. The color, the cinematography. I love this film. I think I've seen it 4 times now.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 times. This is your train spotting.
It is. This is my train spotting. I love it.
4:30, same thing.
I'm just going to keep bringing it back to Ewan McGregor, even though he's not in this.
Well, I mean, we have to. Otherwise, people are just going to be lost. They're going to but I don't understand. They're not talking about Ewan McGregor.
In the grand tradition, though, of Brandice introducing me to things that I've never seen and vice versa, I hadn't seen this film before getting my homework for this podcast. And it's great. It's super entertaining. It's the female John Wick film that I feel Charlize should have been making this whole time. She's had a career. She's just really well cast in it. She was Furiosa in Mad Max, and they decided to finally give her something where she could be that female Bond. And it's great. I want a sequel that's even better than this. I want a sequel that's set in 95.
Yeah, I mean, she's like 100% total badass in all the stuff she's in, but especially in this film. And what makes it so unique too, a lot of people are talking about it, is they didn't shy away from showing her get hurt. Usually when you have female characters in sort of like a badass lead action role, you don't see them getting like punched around like you would a male character like John Wick.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely don't pull punches like with her. You see her like taking a lot of hits, but then obviously she gives twice as good. So like that was also a little bit revolutionary in this film too.
She gets roughed up in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the violence in this film is very visceral.
Yes. Yes.
So David Leitch did work on John Wick.
Yeah.
So I guess she sparred with Keanu to get ready for this film.
Oh, really?
So Keanu was getting ready for John Wick 2, and Charlize and Keanu sparred together since, they're both going to just take a bunch of beatings and give a bunch of beatings in their respective films.
I can't imagine Keanu sparring with someone and not being like super nice about it. Like,
I know, right?
I'm really sorry, Charlize.
Like the mere fact that Keanu Reeves plays John Wick just shows that he's a much better actor than people give him credit for, because you're talking about the nicest guy in the world, just like beating the shit out of people.
The range. Whereas like with Charlize, like you really buy that she's that like ice in her veins, like cool, I don't give a shit about anything and whether you live or die character. I don't know if she's like that in real life, but she sells the shit out of it.
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
Just like it's just her personified. So the 80s, the component of this is also a pretty solid soundtrack. I had a lot of questions because this is what I do in movies that are set in a different period. Like, is this period correct? Like, are these songs, did they come out like at the same time? And then I looked it up. And so everything came out before the 1989 setting. And most of the songs that they used came out around like 83. So like 99 Loof Balloons came out in 83. Major Tom came out in 83. And so there are some people like bitching on the internet about how if you were in West Berlin in 89, you'd actually be listening to like weird like house nightclub music.
Yeah, I was going to say, where are the discotheques in this film?
Where are the discotheques? Like you would not be listening to Politics of Dancing in Berlin in 1989 because you would be like kicked out of the discotheque. But the problem with that is if you're a filmmaker, you can't use a bunch of like underground techno because it's not going to relay the thing that you need to relay about where you are in space-time. So
also, it's not cool enough for the action scenes in this movie.
Completely, like that would be a bad movie if it was all set to like techno,
right? Like definitely.
And you just have Run Lola Run.
You would have like an actual German art house film, and this is just like Hollywood spin on it. But I liked it. I liked that it opens with cat people. So you guys all know I'm a Bowie fan too. It's my other preoccupation. I feel like there's some kind of rule in Hollywood where if you're going to burn something, you have to play Cat People by David Bowie. She burns this picture and then it's like putting out the fire with gasoline, and it's the same thing that happens in Inglourious Bastards, except that there's a bigger fire in that movie and more Nazis die.
Slightly larger fire.
Yeah, slightly larger. A lot of Nazis.
I also just want to point out that Nicole, I don't think, has done a single episode on this podcast that doesn't somehow feature David Bowie.
It all comes back around. I'm telling you guys, he is the alpha omega. It's not even it's the way it is.
No, but I totally agree. Like, even if that's maybe not totally appropriate for Berlin at this time period, it still does like a bang up job of setting the tone, time, and place for like the major portion of like the audience watching the film. Like, it's not too mainstream, but it's familiar enough, like mixed with some like slightly deeper cuts that like, you know, like it totally sets the place, but it's also super interesting and it sets the tone really well. And it also has like really good pacing and energy to fit this like much harder, edgier like Bond film.
Yeah, I mean, it's still got that like it's got like a cool industrial edge to it also, which is refreshing. Like they didn't go with all, you know, top 40 hits of the 80s. Not everything is totally recognizable. Like Ministry is in this. There's a Susie and the Banshees song in this. Like it's still not being completely obvious, in my opinion. And it's like throwing in, again, like that kind of tone setting and like scene setting stuff. Like, let's throw in something that's actually in German. So you remember we're in Berlin.
Right, yeah.
I like that, with New Order's Blue Monday, which is, obviously a huge song. It's set to a scene in Germany. Like, it's not like, oh, we're in London, so we have to play New Order. Like they don't have to be like hitting you over the head with references.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Unlike how they hit you over the head with the Stoli vodka sponsorship.
No, the Jack Daniel's sponsorship. Maybe both.
There's a whole thing. I actually looked it up because I was so fascinated by it. I was like, wow, Stoli the vodka paid a lot of money to be in this movie. How many times do you think it's placed in the movie? Just take a guess. It's actually not that high.
13.
Ryan?
7.
It's actually 8 times that it's played. Like, that's a lot if you think about advertising money, like fully, like, can we turn the Stoli label, like, to the camera?
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot.
Write the label just so you really see that, like, name pop.
Get a neon, like, reflection on that, please.
Before it smashes someone in the head.
Yeah.
Also, just want to remind the listeners that we work in advertising, so we kind of notice these things. I don't know if the average person was like, holy shit, vodka, but like...
if you didn't notice that Stoli is in it, but then you suddenly had like a craving for vodka on ice, this is why.
Yeah, that's what was happening.
Yeah, that's what was happening. That's what they wanted you to do. She asks for it twice in the movie too, kind of that James Bond effect where...
Yeah, that's her drink of choice.
Her drink of choice. It's Stoli on ice and then a nice ice bath to go with it.
That's where you're trying to get the impression that she was Russian. She's a Russian double agent.
We should have known.
Spoiler.
Should have known.
Why is this MI6 agent ordering a vodka?
It's a great point.
I thought alcohol was like the great unifier of all countries.
Well, I don't know. We'll never know now because she was in fact kind of a Russian double agent. Spoiler.
I was so preoccupied with the fact that Stoli was in this movie so many fucking times that I didn't even think about it in terms of like, oh, she might be Russian.
Back to the soundtrack. I felt like there was only one miss for me, and that was during the fight sequence when Charlize Theron fights like the police in the, how do you say his name? Gascon,
yeah.
Gascon. There we go. In Gascon's apartment when the police come. And she's fighting them. It's set to Father Figure by George Michael, which was like such a weird juxtaposition because the whole rest of the film, all of the action and the fight sequences are set to this like fast-paced Britpop industrial tone, and then all of a sudden, just in the middle of the movie, it's like George Michael, and it's like slow and smooth and weird, and I was just like, what is happening?
It was weird. My take on that was she had to put on whatever like was in the stereo already, and it just ended up being that.
I mean, yeah, because it was contextual, but like as the people making the movie, why was the person in that apartment listening to George Michael?
It was actually not David Leitch's first choice. Oh. His first choice was Take My Breath. Is it Take My Breath Away by Berlin?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
That would have been so much better. Why was it not? What happened?
What happened?
I guess he couldn't afford the licensing for that.
Oh, that would have been great because it's Berlin. Come on.
Get it? Berlin and Berlin.
Go on the nose.
Berlin, written by Giorgio Moroder.
And Take My Breath Away while he's literally punching the shit out of some cops and taking their breath away. So
from the most American film soundtrack possible, Top Gun.
That's what I was trying to say, is that the only thing that's problematic for me is that it's so linked to Top Gun that I can't even listen to that song in like an ambient setting and not think about Kelly McGillis like on a motorcycle. So I do think that would be not the freshest choice, but I see that for both they were probably trying to go for that, like, this is just what's in the stereo, it's like somebody listening to.
What about the other one, the Riding on the Metro?
I kind of don't remember what.
Never mind.
No, I'm like trying to remember the scene that goes against.
It's just like, it's not the most intense fight sequence she has, because that's obviously with like the Russian dudes later.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's when the cops come up and she's like fighting the cops with like that rope, or I don't know if it's like a rope or
Oh.
whatever. And then she's like using that like around her arm to like whatever. And then she hooks the police officer and then like slides down.
So some of these fight scenes were choreographed in such a cool way, like that one in particular, where she literally like uses a whole dude as like a grappling hook.
Yeah.
That I think I was not paying attention to the background music. Like I was just in awe of these fight scenes because they were really impressive.
They were stunning.
Yeah, so I don't even think that I registered it. And I think partly too, like some of the things, like riding on the metro is such a, like you've heard it so many times, like maybe it's just kind of meant to be there for texture. It's not really meant to take over the scene or to support the scene like a super strong way.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, the whole George Michael thing, maybe it's because I have seen it 4 times. So it's not like I still obviously appreciate the action in the film, but nothing's like a surprise to me anymore. It's just every single time that like George Michael just like pops out. Like it does take over the scene for me.
I wish it had been Careless Whispers by Wham. If you're going to go George Michael, you know, just go with that.
I think that song's too chill for beating the crap out of people.
It's got like a nice sax. She's just kicking around a bunch of jazz sax.
The father figure one's pretty slow.
Oh.
What about you, Ryan? What were your thoughts on the soundtrack? Let's hear what you think.
Yeah, so I think they did a pretty good job of not being too obvious with things. Like when I saw 99 Luft Balloons on the soundtrack, I kind of cringed because I think Zack Snyder ruined that in Watchmen, where it's like Germany 1980 and you hear 99 Luft Balloons.
Oh God, I blocked that movie out of my memory.
So I really like that, you know, it shows up for like a quick cameo. Like that guy tells that kid to start dancing, plays the beginning of 99 Luft Balloons, and then just beats the crap out of the kid and the radio.
That to me was the most intense moment of violence.
It was like super intense. So like there's the juxtaposition of 99 Luft Balloons, which, you know, I think everyone kind of assumes is this like really cheery poppy song, even though isn't it about like nuclear war?
That's my understanding of it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think that, I don't know, the Germans are making that up or something to seem deep.
I'm glad that this film didn't use 99 Luft Balloons to be like, hey, we're in Germany in the 80s. It's just kind of part of the movie.
Right.
Just like I was happy that Blue Monday wasn't like, hey, we're in London in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. I think the 80s is one of those period settings where the temptation to do something that is hit you over the head with a hammer obvious is just really big, right? Especially when you're considering that the 80s is now really far away. So younger audiences are not going to connect with something unless it's popular enough to know. So there is kind of like a question there of like how do you get across the fact that you're in a particular place and that it's in 1989, but also, you know, not have to use a flock of seagulls, which they do. They do use a flock of seagulls. I ran. She is running.
That's what I mean. It's like there is a lot of stuff that's like on the nose, and there are pretty mainstream songs on there, but it still works, and it's not too annoyingly so. Like I think it walks that line really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, Nicole, like absolutely, like you have a younger audience that isn't necessarily going to connect in the same way. Although that's just like so bizarre to me, and you just made my heart like drop like 10 feet. Like technically, I was like barely born in that time period, but like I'm still so hyper aware of the 80s because it's close enough that it's like, wait, how would someone not connect with the 80s? That's like so bizarre, but true.
Yeah, I am reminded every day by the people I work with that are like, I was born in 1997. I'm like, whoa, that's great. Okay. Yeah, it's and there again, like I think some choices on here that are kind of more of that like sonic texture. I like that they use Major Tom, both because it's such a Euro choice, and it also kind of ties into that Bowie thing that they have going on. There's a thing I read about this movie where they wanted Bowie to be in it, but he turned it down like really shortly before he died. And I am torturing myself wondering what role he would even play. Like, would he be one of the MI6 like interrogators?
He probably would have been like a smaller part.
Like a cameo, or I was just like, what would he have even been in this movie? But then again, like John Goodman is in this movie.
Yeah, that to me was like the most strange casting, but it still works. Like I'm not bothered by it, but it's just an interesting choice. Like everyone else seems so natural and fluid in their parts, and his is like, how did that happen? I'm not bothered by it, but how did it happen?
Same. I get the feeling John Goodman just wandered over from a different set and was like, oh, you needed somebody to be the CIA agent? Okay, cool.
Yeah, like he's the American. Is that like the moral of the story here, that he just represents America?
I guess, yeah. It's like John Goodman is America.
Maybe Leitch was a big Roseanne fan.
Roseanne was huge in Berlin. I don't know if you guys knew that. Huge.
That's why.
89.
No, I wish there was more Bill Skarsgård in it because I absolutely loved him in this.
Yeah, he's good in this. It made me think of him not as much as Alexander Skarsgård's kind of less attractive, more Steve Buscemi-esque brother.
I don't know, like he can dress up for a look. Like all the roles that I've seen him in, he is this like suave badass. So it's like, even though I can see the Steve Buscemi like less attractiveness, like I've just only ever seen him in super badass roles. So I'm like, I don't know. I feel like he's eclipsing Alexander Skarsgård at this point.
I mean, this is not a podcast about Alexander Skarsgård, but if it were, we need another hour.
Uh-oh, is Ewan McGregor, should he be getting jealous?
I'm just saying, nobody's putting Ewan McGregor in any movies. Someone put him in movies, so I have more things to talk about from the last decade.
Okay, if we're casting people, then Ewan McGregor would be the boyfriend agent who dies in like the first few seconds.
It's fucked up.
That's who he would be. Perfect. And David Bowie would be the watchmaker.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
So there are a couple covers on the soundtrack. So Blue Monday comes back by the band Health. And I thought they would actually use these covers a little bit more strategically. Like I thought it would be kind of like it would link to the scene where Blue Monday started, but it just seems like it just shows up again at the beginning of the film.
I know that it's like the first few seconds when the agent's running away and when he's like murdered, but when does it come up again?
I think right when Charlize Theron gets to Germany.
Okay, so it like bleeds over. I get it. Yeah. No, I thought it was pretty funny because I was like, oh, so this like mega Russian badass agent, because that would the first time it plays is contextual because he's listening to it in the car. You like see the door open and he gets out of the car and it's like playing.
Uh-huh.
And I thought it was hilarious that I'm like, oh, this like super badass Russian agent is listening to Blue Monday as he's like gunning down this other agent.
I mean, that song does have like a really good energy, and it does have that really like icy cool kind of feel about it, right? I mean, it's literally called Blue Monday. So I feel like Blue Monday is kind of it's the unofficial theme to this film in a way.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a great tone to set the film, and I think it works perfectly. I just thought that it was really hilarious that they chose to make it contextual in that moment where he opens the door and then the mix changes so it sounds like it's playing from the car stereo. Really
I love when that happens.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that Health's cover of it is not more abrasive.
Yeah, I think they probably toned it down. Like, I bet they were commissioned to do this. They were like, okay, we need something that's like, it's kind of like the original Blue Monday. Don't go crazy.
I think Ryan's just trying to bait me to talk about my past experiences with the band, which
that's what this podcast is about.
Ryan set the trap.
Unfortunately, we didn't record the first few seconds of this conversation because...
Remember, this podcast is a personal story podcast.
Yeah, I completely forgot that I had beef with them. Ryan's like texting me and he's like, I'm sure you're going to have so much to say about them. And I'm like, sure. I mean, I guess they did like a cool cover of Blue Monday. Yeah, I'll have a ton to talk about. I have no idea what he's talking about. As it turns out, I went to some Nine Inch Nails concerts and they opened and it was just like They had every amp imaginable, and obviously I'm in like the pit naturally. I'm like by the rail. And it was like total just like strings of notes, like no like negative space, like no melody or beat or anything. It was just like insanity. And mind you, I listen to industrial music. Like I listen to Nine Inch Nails. So for me to be like, what the hell was that? And why was it so loud? And why are my eardrums bleeding? It's like a strong statement. Anyway, I completely forgot about that. And I forgot that I apparently complained about that to Ryan. And we started this podcast and before we started recording, and he was like, so are you going to have like a ton to talk about? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, what about their ears bleeding for Nine Inch Nails? And I was like, holy shit, I completely forgot about that. I blacked them out because
Ryan does not forget a concert story. Ryan does not forget a concert experience. If you tell Ryan your like secrets about what has happened to you at a show, it's going to keep them.
Clearly. So now I feel like I should just do that. Like I should just like tell Ryan about all of my concert experiences because clearly I can't be trusted to remember them. So I should just have him remember them for me.
So this is another service that Ryan provides. If you have concert experiences that you're worried you might forget because of the pandemic, just tell him. He'll remember. He'll keep them in his lockbox, and yeah, it'll be like a time capsule that you can just tap into whenever you're ready.
Yeah, sure, lockbox. Just like you brought up the whole pentatonics thing on this podcast.
No, Nicole brought up the pentatonics thing.
I bring it up every chance I get. Well, I guess it's ironic that health is bad for your health.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure that they're great and other people like them. I was just like, I'm here for Nine Inch Nails. Let's get the opening bands off stage and let's get this started.
That's
and these are like small, and these are small shows, like 1,000 people max shows.
Oh yeah, really tiny, like music hall, like really tiny venues. Like they could have used half of the equipment that they had on that stage. When you're louder than like the headliner, it's a problem.
I've also seen Health live. So I saw them open for Of Montreal.
That's an interesting choice.
And they would actually kind of fit on the soundtrack a little bit. So I thought Health was fine, but then I read these interviews with them after we saw them, and they were saying about how they opened for like Vampire Weekend and like for Of Montreal, and just the amount of threats of physical harm that they got from fans of like Vampire Weekend about how much they hated watching Health.
Oh my god, I didn't know.
I promise it wasn't me. I promise I didn't send them a single note.
Wow, a bunch of like.
No, you don't use social media, Brandice.
How would you send it, by a pigeon?
I could have hands written them a note. Come on, but I didn't.
Dear Health.
Boo! Get off the stage.
That's super funny. I mean, to be fair, though, if you're seeing Vampire Weekend, that is not the opening act that you're looking for.
Well, I mean, that's a problem when you just say that they've opened for Nine Inch Nails, of Montreal, and Vampire Weekend. Like, those are three very different bands.
It doesn't work for anyone, really. I mean, especially not Health. Health, what are you doing? Who is your manager?
Yeah, like find your genre and open for that genre.
Yeah, for sure. Pentatonics is probably available. Vampire Weekend needed an opening.
Can you imagine Health with like all of the industrial equipment and amps opening for like an a cappella group with no instruments? That would be an instant heart attack.
I'm actually having a really good time imagining like a bunch of like goth industrial platform boots like sailing at pentatonics.
Wait, no. I thought we were going in a different direction. Can we please start a goth a cappella band? This is what we need in 2021.
All right, look for that next. Next podcast, the debut of Brandice and I's first ever goth a cappella band. It's gonna be great.
If you're in the Los Angeles area, check the want ads on Craigslist. We're hiring. Auditions start next week.
I don't really play an instrument, so this would be my only foray into
Exactly.
help us out.
Wear black, sing some stuff, and it's good.
You don't even have to sing great. Just, know some Cure songs.
Ryan is like dead silent. He's like, I'm over this.
So
Like,
Ryan is offended by just like the mere idea of this, I think.
I'm trying to process this all.
I really want this to happen now. I mean, I hate acapella. I don't even like acapella, but if you told me if there was a goth acapella group, I think I'd have to show up.
Oh man, you also said you didn't like musicals, and then you started talking about cabaret.
Liza Minnelli. Just lies everywhere. Can you imagine?
We're the only people who haven't seen Cabaret. You can't hold that against me.
Can you imagine if that fight scene in the stairway that was set to Father Figure was set to like the Pentatonics version of Father Figure?
That's something that definitely does not need to happen.
No. That does not need to happen. I also thought you were going in a different direction with that. I thought you were going to say like Liza Minnelli singing something.
Well, your first album should definitely be an a cappella version of Cabaret.
I feel like that would sell.
Isn't that semi-goth?
Yeah, I mean, so many mixed references here. It's great. Let's just get a grab bag and throw everything in and just pull random shit out.
I mean, my reference is still Schitt's Creek, so I'm like, well, Stevie's kind of goth for that show.
Totally. We're not doing a Cabaret episode. I can't guarantee you we'll get through all of Cabaret.
Yeah, I think Nicole and I are firmly okay with having all the wrong facts about Cabaret.
Yeah.
Like, we never want to be right.
We're comfortable with where we are. I watched this movie because I'm like, yes, I would like to see some asses getting kicked. This sounds great.
I mean, this is a musical. You can't hold the musical thing over me with Atomic Blonde. I have only recommended one musical. Right?
And that's all you're going to get.
Yes, just one. But it had Ewan McGregor in it, so you can't. No, you know you enjoyed it.
I made an exception.
You listen to the Moulin Rouge soundtrack every single morning. He serenades you awake, please.
I mean, this is definitely, I have to say that Atomic Blonde is a strong left turn from Moulin Rouge, which is so like overly in touch with its feelings. And this film was just like, what are feelings, right? So,
but again, it's me. The whole Moulin Rouge thing is like a weird aberration. Like, I am the cold-blooded, like icy cold, Stoli, Charlize Theron. Like, this is my jam.
I didn't want to bring it up because I felt like you would be mildly offended, but this is like so on brand for you. It might as well be called Atomic Redhead. Brandice. Yeah.
I love that. Why would I be offended? No, it's so on brand for me. Like this, I loved this movie, everything about it. I'm like, yes. I don't want to live this movie because I don't want to get the shit kicked out of me. But other than that, I'm here for it.
I also really appreciated it in this film. This is not really a music comment, so I apologize for people that tune in to listen about soundtracks. That's not always what it says. But the woman who is like the French secret agent, and just how terrible she is at being a secret agent.
She's so bad. Who gave her clearance to be an agent? Who was like,
yeah, she's not being the crap out of anyone.
No, but the funny thing to me was like basically reaffirming the stereotype that like, oh, we are French, we are so laissez-faire, we cannot even do secret agent things. Like, we're just baguettes and dip in the free, and we're gonna let Charlize Theron like fight all our battles for us.
We were waiting for Nicole to have a Russian accent, but instead it was French. Still here for it. Still really happy that happened. No, the best part was when she called James McAvoy and was like, I know what you did. And it's like, why would you tip your hand?
I thought you were a secret agent too.
I know. Like, so dumb. Like, she's so dumb.
It's so bad. Like, every choice that she makes in that movie is basically one of, like, I'm just following my heart. It's like, you're a secret agent, man. Like, you're gonna get killed, and then she does get killed. Spoiler.
Yeah, absolutely. She 100% like did not last, and like it's really not her fault. Whoever cleared her and sent her into the field, like that person just really messed up.
It made me want to know more about whatever the equivalent of MI6 is. Not sex, not MI6. Although there is a lot of sex in this movie.
There's a lot of sex in this movie. It's a very sexy film.
It's a very sexy movie. In addition to being like a very cool looking movie, a lot of sex in this movie. Do not watch this with your mom.
Might be a little awkward.
Yeah, don't watch this with anyone's mom.
Yeah. So what's the French equivalent to MI6, CIA, and KGB?
Right. Like, do they have one, or did
Really
they
not? They were the best she had. I mean, she was the best they had.
She was the best of them, and she is just so terrible. She's like, I just want to be.
She looks like she's from Moulin Rouge.
She's the wrong film.
Yep. I think she was the bad assassin in Kingsman, though. So it's not her first action film. She's a lot more successful in that one.
Interesting. Yeah, I know she's been in. So speaking of like, yeah, over the top sexy things, she's in that Gaspar Noé movie Climax. It's basically a bunch of people like taking drugs and having an orgy, and that's the extent of my knowledge about that film.
Sure.
But yeah, so she's got other stuff going on. I just can't believe that they wrote this character to be so intentionally a terrible secret agent. Like, it would be one thing if they wrote a character for Charlize Theron to like have a torrid affair with, and that character were like, you know, just whatever, like a normal femme fatale, and then you could kind of understand why she's just like, why she gets killed in the end. But she's just like terrible at her job. It really upset me.
Yeah, they introduce her in a phone booth just staring at Charlize Theron outside the airport.
I'm going to hold up this really obvious camera and take your photo.
Like, she's not even on the phone. She's just like holding the handset and just staring at Charlize Theron as she gets into the car.
Right, and then James McAvoy's character, who is a slightly better secret agent, tells Charlize Theron's character, like, well, if I was following you, you'd never know. And I'm like, well, yeah, I would hope so. Like, you are.
That's the point.
That's your whole job. Like,
yeah, you're all spies.
Right. This is spy shit. And if you don't know spy shit.
I feel like they all kind of suck. I mean, obviously Charlize Theron's good at like kicking ass. But in terms of like spy stuff, I actually think they all suck. It's a whole bunch of them just like going around talking to each other without anyone knowing what's actually going on. Like, the only person who knew what was going on was the watchmaker. That's it.
Yeah, there's some internal logic stuff in this movie that like it falls apart a little bit, but it looks so cool, and the soundtrack is so good to go with like the cool shit that you're seeing, that like, you know, the world of it is so cool, and the fight scenes are so cool that it doesn't really matter. It's like any like average Bond movie, right? Where you're like, I don't really care about the plot.
Yeah.
I just want to like be immersed in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a spy movie that's not really about the twists.
No, there aren't really a lot of like hard, like, oh my, except for the end. The end obviously is a reveal, but the rest of the movie is just kind of, yeah, it's just a lot of Charlize Theron getting herself out of some really precarious situations where she has to do stuff like stick a car key into some guy's face.
That one was great too.
She has a pretty great career. You know, it's not like a bulletproof career, but you know, the fact that she's been able to be in Oscar bait films and also basically be, you know, maybe the most successful female action star perhaps ever.
Well, Mila Jovovich.
Well, she's approaching that territory if they keep going with these Atomic Blonde films.
Is there any talk of there being a sequel to this film?
I don't think so.
They definitely set it up, right?
Mm-hmm. It's open-ended.
I found it. It has been announced the film is in development as a Netflix exclusive film.
Oh, wow. Really?
That's exciting.
Brandice is so happy right now.
I'm so happy right now. Yeah, I see it. Atomic Blonde too.
She doesn't have to watch the first movie again for the 5th time.
I know, right? I watched The Old Guard though, and I was like kind of disappointed.
I was disappointed when she was with Stephen Jenkins from Third Eye Blind.
Wow. See what we mean about Ryan not forgetting things?
Right? It's like a steel trap.
So long ago.
Yeah, it was from 98 to 2001.
See?
Well, I looked that up. I knew they were together at some point. I just didn't remember when. Their third album, which I don't think anyone cared about at that point, apparently is about how he was sad that they broke up.
I wish you would step back off that ledge, my friend.
No, that's Yes Man.
Oh.
That's
It's the only Third Eye Blind song I could actually conjure at this moment.
doot 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 doot. You know that one.
I do know that one. But I don't know how the rest of it goes.
I'm pretty sure there's a thing where for editorial content, you can actually play like 15 seconds of a song.
No, it's better if we sing it.
How many bars can we do? How if it's really bad and you can't tell that it's the song, does that count?
I think you can just get sued for slander at that point.
I'm not the one that brought up Charlize's dating history, so your can of worms, Ryan.
I mean, how can we not bring that up on this podcast?
Like, definitely clear who was stepping down in that. Like, you can do a lot better, Charlize.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't think of another Charlize Theron movie off the top of my head besides Monster, because you just brought it up, and Mad Max.
Monster, Mad Max. Shit, I just had it up.
I think Ryan is correct. I think she's had like a varied and, successful career. I think it helps to be tall.
Mm-hmm.
Is the moral of the story. Like,
she was in Snow White and the Huntsman.
Gorgeous. But she's like 6 feet or over 6 feet, right? She's got she's very tall.
I'm trying to remember. I saw this one where she's like, is it Tully? She plays this like author, like a ghostwriter, and she's supposed to be like this adult child, and it was just like such a weird.
Oh, Young Adult. Is it called Young Adult and has Patton Oswalt in it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this little indie flick. Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's been in a lot of stuff.
She's been in a lot of stuff, right? I hope she gets a sequel to this movie because I do think that it's cool. I mean, it's based on a graphic novel, which I assume is a series, right? So the premise is spy shit, as we said. So there's really no end to that if the Bond franchise has any implications. No. You can keep doing that forever.
Oh, she was Megyn Kelly in Bombshell. That got like her a lot of nods.
Right.
Yeah, I think she got I think she was nominated for an Oscar for that, but she won for Monster, and I think there was another movie. Was it North County? Is that the film?
I don't remember, but she has
North Country.
I do remember. Here's another 90s reference, just for Ryan. 90s aughts reference. Do you remember that she was in that Aeon Flux movie?
I do.
Mm-hmm. So I was just going to say, she has a long history of action stuff.
History of action films, but I feel like until her role as Furiosa in Mad Max, people weren't really. I feel like that Aeon Flux movie kind of ruined it for her for a little while because it wasn't successful.
Yeah. Which
sucks because, again, it's great casting. There is nothing wrong with her as an action star. I feel like she's like the Bond that we need.
Mm-hmm. She was pretty it wasn't really an action film for hand-to-hand combat, but she was very I want to say did a lot of physical acting in the Italian Job. And so I think that kind of put her on that path. And then I think you're right. I think Aeon Flux just kind of went a little bit sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah, she would show up a lot in action movies. I think she was in Snow White and the Huntsman, and she was in The Fate of the Furious as well. But as far as being front and center, the action star, I think that took a while. It wasn't until Mad Max where people could see that she could carry a whole action movie by herself.
Right. This movie also kind of reminded me a little bit of Drive. It had the same aesthetic kind of quality as Drive to me, a lot of neon and spray paint. And
I haven't seen it.
Wow, really? You haven't seen Drive? I feel like you would like Drive because it's also very emotionally detached.
I will put it on my to-watch list.
Good soundtrack too.
Yeah, good soundtrack also. So, some parallels. Oh, by the way, the only song on this soundtrack that is actually not correct for the period. Do you guys know what it is? Guess.
London Calling.
So London Calling came out before 89. So technically, London Calling works.
Well, I can think of one, but I thought we weren't talking about it.
It's like, oh, we're not talking about it. That's right. No, maybe there's two then. And I don't know where the song that we are like, we're not discussing a certain musician with certain abuse history,
Problematic stuff.
who is incredibly problematic. We will not be bringing up on this podcast because fuck that guy. No, this song is "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy.
Oh, right.
So yeah, so that movie was released after 1989.
It's not even on.
So there's a scene with James McAvoy in the beginning where he's like hanging out with a bunch of, you know, like underground Berlin like punks or whatever, like outside, and it's playing.
That's like when you first see Bill Skarsgård, right?
Maybe. I know James McAvoy is there. I can't remember Bill Skarsgård's face. I'm going to be honest with you because I get it confused.
Rude.
I know. I'm sorry.
Those are fighting words.
I can't remember his face. I have.
They don't have it on. They don't have it on the official soundtrack list. So maybe they realized afterwards they're like, "Shit, we fucked up," and so they took it off the soundtrack.
Oh, that's possible. That's possible. I remembered it really specifically because I was like, "Is this right?"
Or they probably just didn't want to pay for it.
Oh, that could be too. Yeah.
I mean, it would kind of stick out like a sore thumb with all the other songs on the soundtrack.
Nope. I still stand by the fact that that's the George Michael song.
The Public Enemy song in the middle of there would be like Health opening for Vampire Weekend.
You know, I do feel like though this soundtrack, like the track listing on this thing is, it's intended to be listened to all the way through, which I don't know that you can say about every modern movie soundtrack. This came out in 2017. Is that right?
Yes.
Something like that. I mean, it definitely like is a mood. Like there's a mood in this, right? It's like a little bit of 80s, a little bit of industrial. If you're into those things and that's like your wheelhouse, you're probably going to listen to this soundtrack from back to front.
Yeah, no, I think it's
like you could put this on and play it and it would not, nothing would take you like wildly out of the mood that you're in. So that's kind of cool. It's thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
So the film ends with Under Pressure, and that's the one song on the soundtrack I feel that like falls pretty flat.
It's an obvious choice, right? Because how many times have we heard Under Pressure in various movies? Like somebody should look that up someday because it is a popular choice.
Yes. Very.
It's so many scenarios that can work for. It can work for a rom-com, and it can work for this. And
I believe it was in the trailer for Adaptation.
Really? But again, like that's a complete, wildly different thing than what this is. So, yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you on that, Ryan. I think that that's, as much as I love that song, and I'm not mad about hearing it, I don't think I wanted it in that moment. I could have used another, like, Susie and the Banshees song or something. It's such a, like, hard-edged movie that I do feel like that probably doesn't work. Just go harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, like, a little bit of an interesting tone to leave it at because, you know, she's, like, walking away from, like, this whole, like, entire life and finally can, like, take a breath.
But
so
the whole,
it's on the nose, but like it's just the tone is like such a like weird like shift in terms of just the feeling of it.
The tone is weird, and spoiler again, if you haven't seen Atomic Blonde, why are you listening to this?
Yeah, like
you really shouldn't be.
No, sorry.
Go back, just pause right now, go watch Atomic Blonde, come back. So the whole scene, I think, being that reveal of like, oh, she's actually working for America, e.g. John Goodman. So that whole reveal at the end is that maybe where it's coming from, kind of like that we're shifting the tone.
Maybe I thought it was like the whole like, because I mean you're not supposed to know because obviously that's like the big twist, but it's like even when she's in the debriefing with MI6, she's still being a spy there, like she's still performing, and so the only time we see her as her is when she gets on the elevator and then when she gets on the plane.
True.
That to me was like the big tonal shift is even when we thought that she was herself in like the apartment in London when she's in the ice bath and when she's like being debriefed, like none of that was her.
Right. That whole like, oh, your face changes when you are telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, I better not do it again. And then you see her kind of like be herself at the end. And then Under Pressure plays.
Yep.
Which is weird. Could have been something else.
Could have been father figure.
Yeah, they should have just like flipped those two.
I mean, John Goodman is there. So, you know. Yeah.
That makes sense, actually. It totally makes sense. I should have just flipped those two songs. Under Pressure is great for the fight sequence, and Father Figure is great for when she comes back to good old John Goodman on the airplane.
Yeah. I mean, the ones that I think worked best for me in this movie were definitely like the Ministry song and Cities in Dust by Susie and the Banshees, and that 99 Loop Balloons moment that I think is kind of nice here. Like the stuff that felt a little bit, not deep cut, but a little bit more like had a little bit of an edge to it. Because it's just such an edgy movie, and the violence is, like Ryan said up front, like it's really visceral.
Yeah.
So you're either going to go all the way with that father figure juxtaposition, or you're going to have to match it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess there's some irony with the fact it's called Under Pressure, and it's like the only part of the movie where like you don't feel all this tension.
Yeah.
Right? But it's an odd song that way, because it's a song about being under pressure, but it also has like this certain like
lightness to
like,
it.
yeah, like pop lightness to it. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's interesting for that song in general, is I think everyone hears it as this like happy, like light song, but it's actually a very depressing, very deep and very emotional song, especially now that both of these people are dead and for various reasons. Like it's a weird song in that way too. Like it's just the tone of the song itself totally is at odds with like the actual lyrics.
Wasn't that like a trendy thing to do in like the 80s though? Like, you know, Van Halen's Jump is like the same thing, where it's like this really upbeat song, but it's about like someone thinking about jumping off a bridge.
Which again, it feels like that's so made up, because Van Halen's Jump is like the height of cheese. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right? It's like, how can you dress that up in spandex and then also tell me that it's about suicide? Okay. That reminds me, I think it was a thing in the 80s. So Voices Carry by Till Tuesday is on this soundtrack. It's in the movie. I don't know that it's on the soundtrack proper.
It is.
So I caught it. And Ryan, you'll probably know this, but do you know who the lead singer of Till Tuesday is?
Till Tuesday.
If you don't know, I'm about to blow your mind, because you're going to freak out.
Oh, Amy Mann.
Yeah, it freaked me out, because I just found this out recently, that Amy Mann, like, whatever, like indie shed since the 90s, like, who has this whole kind of like singer-songwriter career. She had this 80s band called Till Tuesday, and their big hit was Voices Carry. And it's like, it's the kind of song that you hear in an elevator or while your teeth are being drilled on. Like, you don't really think about it. You don't think about it, right? If you don't,
are you going to?
No, but really, like, it's on, like, I don't know, like, if you live here in Southern California, it's on, like, the Coast Radio, Coast 103.5, like, soft hits. Like, it's not an aggressive song. You don't really think about it. You just kind of let it pass by you. And you've heard it a million times. Voices Carry is about an abusive relationship. Voices Carry is about being, like, beat by your boyfriend. Which is a very Amy Mann kind of, like, dark place to go with it, but it is not a dark-sounding song.
Maybe that's also the theme of, like, all these songs pulled from the 80s, because, like we said, 99 Lift Balloons, same thing.
Maybe. And maybe that's kind of like a whole commentary on the 80s itself, right? Is that everything was very like glossy on the exterior, but that doesn't mean that people weren't like having problems.
Oh yeah, no, like when I watch like films about teenagers and people in high school in the 80s, like written and like set and done like in the 80s, it's horrifying. It's like everyone has a switchblade and like everything is like so intense, and it's like, holy shit. Like this isn't even like some huge like inner city school. This is just like some random high school out in the sticks, and it's like they're all switchblade gangs. Like,
are you talking about outsiders? Yeah, no, it's true though. It's true. There's the 80s is a weird thing. Even listening to 80s music, Tears for Fears is not on the soundtrack, but Tears for Fears is one of those bands that like they're completely innocuous on the surface, but every time I listen to them for whatever reason, they give me like a weird feeling inside. Like it makes me feel bad to listen to Tears for Fears.
Well, they also have Mad World.
Yeah, and I mean, like, they've got the whole Donnie Darko connection, but even before that, like, I feel like Tears for Fears I don't know, it brings me to a very weird headspace, and I think that's something to do with, there being these kind of, like, weird, like, dark trenches of, like, 80s culture, where everything was trying to be really peppy and poppy, and, like, but it wasn't necessarily that way.
Yeah, like wearing the neon and the glitter to cover for all of the darkness.
Exactly. That's something I back in high school, I interviewed Blake from Jawbreaker Jets to Brazil, and I don't know why we got on the topic of the 80s, but he basically said, like, all the makeup and all the dress up and the big hair, it's because people were basically afraid of nuclear war.
That's
it was like a reaction to that.
That's super heavy.
That's really heavy. Yeah. Makes sense,
And
though.
I think that's a reflection in the music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense. Like, there's a whole subtext to these, like, Cold War era songs that get played in this particular film. And maybe they were selected for that, too. Like, maybe people bitching about, like, well, these songs are from 83. But I like that they have kind of that that mood and that relevance to this, Berlin setting.
Mm-hmm.
It works.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Brandice and Nicole, for coming on the podcast again.
Thank you, Ryan, for having us and for letting us spin wildly out of control with these topics.
Yeah, thanks for not firing us yet.
Yay, we're not fired. But we do need to start that a cappella goth band, so we have a backup plan.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
If you want to start the a cappella goth band with Nicole and Brandice, you can email us at soundtrackcast@gmail.com. I will forward that information to them.
Do it. We want fan mail.
We'll provide you eye makeup.
Yeah.
So if you haven't noticed, I've stopped calling you guests. Because I think you are at this point regular contributors to the show.
It's actually semi-hurtful, but also flattering.
Wait, so instead of getting fired, we've been promoted?
I think so. I mean, Nicole bought a microphone. What am I supposed to do about that?
Nicole's committed.
Yeah, this microphone purchase is just to guilt Ryan into letting me stay.
So you hear that, folks? Whether you like it or not, you're going to hear us again.
Yeah, so we'll do another film about Europe, I'm sure.
Also, Ewan McGregor.
And possibly also about Ewan McGregor.
And
Most likely about Ewan McGregor.
Rubbing
Yeah, I need to brush up on my education of Alexander Skarsgård.
Just sitting here silently so I don't say anything disgusting.
So we will be back with another film, possibly about Europe, possibly with Ewan McGregor in it. And we'll be back to talk about the music.
Thanks for joining us this week on Soundtrack Your Life. Make sure to visit our website, soundtrackyourlife.net, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too.